Okay, today's class is about human resource policies and practices. We have touched base on almost everything in org behavior. We've talked about individual behavior, which started off with perception, motivation, personality, learning, attitudes, emotions, and all that stuff. And then we moved on to group behavior. We talked about group dynamics and work teams and how work team applications are possible to be adopted at the workplace itself. We also discussed plenty of things regarding the organization in terms of structure, communication. Also, we discussed plenty of things in leadership and all that stuff which is related with organization. So we're done with all of that. And obviously, org behavior is the basis for all HR practices and policies. So, and that's the reason it's about people, it's about you and me together in the company. So it makes proper sense because org behavior is the basis of HR. We'll just have a little chapter on human resource management. And if you have already taken HRMT 315, I think you know very well all that you have to do in this chapter. How many of you have taken the HRMT 315 course already? None of you? None. Okay, that's strange because it's also a business core class. So obviously it's a nice introduction to that course. You have to take it. It's part of the business core, upper level core. So I'm sure you're going to take it soon. HRMT 315 is human resource management. So let's go off and discuss these slides. Learning objectives for today's class. We want to focus on recruitment methods. And obviously following recruitment, we have selection process. So we'll talk a little bit about the selection methods as well. We'll also discuss what are the substantive selection methods. You're all aware of it because you've applied for jobs, you've taken those interviews, you've gone through those selection tests, and there have been background checks and stuff like that. So these are all familiar things, nothing new that you do not know. And we're also going to touch base on training methods. Why is it that when we select employees, we need to focus on assessing training needs based on the performance, and then customize training programs to improve their skill sets, to contribute to their competencies, and update their skills basically. And all in the process, we are interested in having an impact on their performance. We don't want to give training that's useless. That's just a waste of time and resources. We want to give training where they can transfer that whatever they have learned in the training process, they can transfer that at the workplace. And eventually, if it improves their performance, we are also interested in evaluating performance. We want to make sure that our star performers are recognized, efforts are being recognized, and they're rewarded. And any good behavior, traits, or results are reinforced. So when you work very hard and it shows up in your performance evaluation, and you get a reward in terms of a promotion, in terms of incentives, in terms of a more interesting and challenging work. Rewards can be extrinsic as well as intrinsic. So all that comes through because we have a proper performance evaluation process. And only when you reinforce positive performance are employees going to be motivated, and they won't want to stay with you because you recognize their performance. We'll also describe the leadership role of HR in organizations because HR is somehow strategic. If you do not know how to manage your human resources really well, perhaps you're not going to manage your other assets like financial assets, physical resources, infrastructure, technologies. Managing these will be difficult. Creating new products, trying to sell them, trying to get more revenues, generating revenues and cutting costs. All that's not possible because you don't know how to manage your human resource. Look at any organization across the globe. It could be a hospital, it could be a university, it could be a restaurant, a hotel, it could be airline industry or a manufacturing company. It's the quality of people that you have, the skill levels that they have, the motivation that they have, the engagement levels that they have, and the willingness to work with passion and think that this organization belongs to them. I think that drives a company's long-term success. So if you're not sure how to manage your human resource, you have a real big problem. So I think HR is no longer like the olden days, where it was just personal management, where you took care of the payroll, you took care of the attendance and the medical insurance and the safety issues. HR is more to do with dealing with people as an asset. They're not treated as a liability, not as an expense, but as an investment. A good human resource only appreciates you. Your value increases by the day. Your value increases as you get more experience, and that's reflected in the type of compensation that you get, the benefits that you get. So we'll move off to recruitment. Now, recruitment is that process where you're trying to attract the most eligible pool of applicants. We don't want to advertise for positions and get a wrong set of applicants to apply for the job. That means there is a problem with our recruitment exercise. So it speaks to the way you create an advertisement, where you have to broadcast a job opening in the organization. So it's about efficiency in communicating and what should be there in that process of communicating job openings. And that means you have to be sure to describe the job correctly. That is what we call as job description. You need to make sure you're mentioning all the skills, competences, credentials, experience that's required to perform that job really well. And that's what we call as job specification. And eventually you have to mention what is it that takes you to get that job and what is the kind of compensation that you will get and the comparative worth of each job. That's what we call as job evaluation. And you also have to determine in the recruitment strategy, what are the sources? Where do we find the kind of people that we are looking for? Do we go to colleges and recruit graduates? Do we go to through consulting agents so that we get more experienced people? Do we make our presence felt in job fairs and stuff like that? Or do we go through LinkedIn and other recruitment agencies? Or do we advertise through our own intranet? We have job postings under career page on our own website. And do we depend on our own employees who can then publicize whatever job openings are there currently? And if they get the right candidate, do we compensate them? Do we reward them? Do we give them a one-time payment because they've got a real fit a person who is really fit into that particular job? So obviously social media is a great platform. Your own employees who can refer someone they know and they've actually seen them work, in terms of personality, in terms of performance, they can credential them, and obviously their references are valuable. Or do you want to go online and use Indeed, Monster, Higher Ed Jobs? There are hundreds of recruiting, online recruiting companies. Or do you want to go for an executive search? If you're filling in top positions, do you go for these specialist consultants who recruit at the topmost positions? They have an access to the best pool of applicants, possible applicants. And we want to make sure we have the right person doing the right job at the right place and right time. And that's basically feeding into the human resource planning. We want the right people to have the right positions in the organizations, because whatever decisions these people make, either they take the company forward or they can take it down. So obviously we want to make sure that our recruitment exercise attracts the right set of applicants. So it's about communicating, it's about having those job descriptions, job specification, and job evaluations in place, and then picking the right source where you can find these kind of people that you're looking for. So once you have that process done, once you have advertised and you have determined the kind of sources that you're advertising these positions for, you get the application. So the first process goes through here, initial selection. And you can call it a rough cut or the first cut. So obviously, if you're getting thousands of applications, it's not just humanly possible that I can go over every single resume and then determine if they're qualifying to go to the next level. So I can run those online resumes that I've received over an algorithm, over a software application, HR application, that can search for those keywords that I'm looking for, or which I think are crucial for above average performance on the job. So the initial selection is you're looking at if the applicant meets the basic qualifications. So it could be some certification, it could be certain skills, certain years of experience, certain job titles that they might have held, basic qualifications, language skills, technical skills, all those kind of key terms can be there. Suppose you say Six Sigma certification or certification in business analytics or certification in fintech. So you could put those key terms along with MBA or bachelor's in business administration. You can pick and choose those key terms that you want. And the software will run over those 1,000 applicants and pick us, say, 30 or 40, which have the highest hit rate on those keywords. So applicants who don't meet those basic qualifications are obviously rejected at this level. So if it's done manually, if you have a small pool of applicants, you can do it. Having a panel of members, senior members, look at all these applicants' resumes and material. And if you're getting thousands, best depend on something that's more accurate in terms of looking at all those keywords that you're looking for in applicants. And the second part is substantive selection, which can include written tests, performance tests, interviews, work sampling, realistic job previews, all those things that you're looking at to see who's the most qualified applicant among those who meet the basic qualifications. So the first cut who meet the basic qualifications, rough cut is the who meet the basic qualifications. The first cut will be after they have gone through written tests, performance tests, interviews, maybe work sampling, or a one-day interaction with important people in the organization. It could be anything. So applicants who meet those basic qualifications but are less qualified than others are obviously rejected. And not that everybody is terrible. They might be okay, but some are better off than the rest. And then you come to the final stage, which we call as contingent selection. Obviously, this is making the final check before you make an offer. So it could mean a reference check, drug tests, medical exams, and stuff like that. And applicants who are among best qualified but who fail contingent selection are still rejected. So those who pass through these three steps in selection, the rough cut, who meet basic qualification, the substantive selection, who are better qualified than the rest who meet the basic qualification, contingent selection, you run a real thorough background check. I've seen background checks in the recent past. They run background checks on your bank and financial status. They run background checks on your criminal record. They have a background check on workplace harassment, sexual assaults, and stuff like that. The fines that you paid. They literally run a background check on everything that you've done across several regions that you work. Suppose you worked in different states in the US. They run it through 3 or 4 different states. And once they get a clean check that this person's credit rating is good and that the financials are good, there are no defaults there, they've not had involvement with criminal activities and stuff like that, then they might eventually are very happy. They know you meet the basic qualification. You did exceedingly well in those written tests and performance interviews, the substantive tests that you have had, and then they have a clean sheet from the background check. And obviously they make an offer to these applicants based on a short list. They don't actually pick only one, they pick at least 3 or 4 because some of the applicants might reject an offer. Then you go to the second one. Maybe the second one would reject an offer in terms of pay, in terms of compensation. There could be, disagreements in anything on the agreement, on the offer itself. So if the second one rejects, then you go to the third. So you generally have a short list of at least 2 to 3 or maybe 3 to 4. So the substantive selection tools can be written tests, performance simulation tests, interviews. You can actually suppose I'm applying for the role of a dean. So you could ask me to play the role of a dean for a single day. I'm dean for the day. So what would I do? A typical dean, what kind of planning activities, what kind of new program discussions, what kind of enrollment retention strategies, what kind of engagement with industry partners, what kind of job placement internship opportunities for students. Perhaps I'm just playing the dean. How do I talk to my staff? What kind of things that I'm looking for from my staff in terms of a plan for the future? How do I discuss things that I have in my mind with the faculty? So I could play the role of a dean for a day. It could be in physical setting or in a Zoom setting or a simulated environment. and then they can evaluate me. Faculty could sit and evaluate, staff can sit and evaluate, students could be there sitting evaluating, business advisory board, industry members, executive council members. They all could be there before they want to choose the best dean. The dean is a very important person in the school, and the dean's decisions have an impact on the overall direction, overall strategy, overall vision of the school itself. So they don't want to get it wrong. So they might ask me to play the dean for a day, and they might make me talk to several stakeholders, students separately, faculty or staff separately, industry and executive council members separately. So the substantive selection process can be really extensive. This just depends on the kind of job you're applying. I know companies like Microsoft use very substantive selection process, maybe 3, 4 rounds of interviews. Could be a preliminary interview, there could be a technical interview, there could be an HR interview. So there could be plenty of interview processes, maybe even tests, performance simulation tests. They could give you a program and ask you to debug the program. So there could be many creative things that you should be prepared for if you're applying for key jobs. You know this, it just tests your intelligence, aptitude, ability, interest. That's what we do in class. All the written tests look at your critical thinking skills, your problem solving skills, your analytical skills are being tested. So those are good predictors, kind of good predictors for what they can expect in terms of how you analyze information, how could you make meaning of data, how would you perform on the job. Performance simulation tests can be many. Work sample, like I can give you a sample work. Suppose if I ask you, if you're applying for a sales job and I actually give you a product today, I give you a product and sell, can you please sell this product? So how would you sell the product? So I can give you just a sample because you're applying for a sales job. I could give you a sample of how would you try and convince a customer to buy a particular product or service that your company is trying to sell. So work sample tests are great. Assessment centers, you have a series of activities that you have to perform, and maybe a bunch of people, a panel is evaluating you, looking at how you interact with people, your interpersonal skills, your leadership skills, your technical abilities, your problem solving skills. So it's an assessment center, a very comprehensive activity that you're performing that requires interaction and support of team members. Situational judgment, similar to assessment centers and sample tests. Suppose I give you a situation where you have to come up with a decision. Let's assume Khalid has reported to Professor Prabhakar of an instance of workplace harassment or sexual harassment, for example. So what would Prabhakar have to do? It's nothing related to the org behavior course. It's nothing related to his grade or the class content itself. So what would a professor do when such a case comes up? So they might just give you a situational analysis. And if I answer correct, I say, yeah, this is a clear Title IX case. You might have to go to the HR. I'll report from my side to the HR. And I'll lead you to the right officer in NYIT. And so that you can report from your side as well. And I have to assure that the confidentiality is maintained and your name will not be out. And so whatever decisions or actions are taken, your confidentiality is protected. So that kind of things that I might have to talk to Khalid in this case. It's nothing related to our behavior. So they can give me a situation and see how I would react in a situation. Realistic job previews are when you explain to the candidate who has applied what to expect on the job. Suppose you come and apply for a faculty job, and I tell you, you have to do accreditation. And suddenly you realize, oh man, I can teach, I can do some research, but to do accreditation, I'm not prepared for it. I don't have the experience. So I could give you realistic job previews to see how you are prepared for doing that job, for taking up that job. So these are all methods which are very useful in selection process. Okay, so interviews, you know that there are two different, broadly classified as two different categories: unstructured versus structured interviews. So unstructured would be something like, tell me about yourself and let's see what you have got to say. And once you start telling whatever you wanted to say, I can ask further questions. So suppose you bring in experience, international experience. So I might ask you, what kind of jobs did you do? What kind of companies you worked with? What kind of achievements and credentials you have had in those work assignments? So it's pretty unstructured. But then if you want to make it structured, it's much easier, because if you're interviewing a lot of people, there are a bunch of things that you're asking questions on, and you can put your assessments there. At the end of the day, when you're evaluating all applicants' performance, it's easy to shortlist the top 3 or top 4. But if it's unstructured, it makes it really difficult, because you might have asked questions which are close to my strengths, and therefore I've answered those questions really well. What are my strengths don't have to be necessarily strengths for others as well. So unstructured interviews are difficult to keep a track of as an interviewer. If you're a panel who is interviewing all these applicants and you're going unstructured, it's very difficult. There might be tough questions for certain people. The same questions can be easy questions for someone else. So you're not making a fair assessment of every applicant. But if it's structured, you have 10 or 6 or 7 or 10 different points that you're asking questions on. So you can evaluate everybody on the same criteria. So that's the pros and cons of structured and unstructured interviews. Panel interviews, it's not necessary you have to have one person in doing the interviewing, because one individual's assessment can go wrong. But if you have a panel that sits across and asks questions, you reduce individual bias, and the chances that one person's judgment can make all the decisions correct, those kind of errors can be avoided. Contingent selection, I told you about that. You do a background check. It could be all your, whatever you've been doing. So under the American with Disabilities Act, firms may not require employees to pass a medical exam. So obviously there are protections of what can be asked and what cannot be asked. But I've seen, they ask about your disability status. You might choose not to answer. Are you a protected, veteran? You don't have to answer. They ask you about your gender. Again, that's not necessary. You have to answer. You can choose not to. And so obviously all these kind of things are asked, but it's pretty voluntary. And so you can still run a background check of how this person has been, workplace behavior kind of stuff, but they need to take your permission and your consent in writing. So once you put your signature and said, these are fine, you can go about asking my previous employers things about me and how I work and my behavior at the workplace, then you're giving them permission. The same consent is required for a background check in terms of education, your financial standing. You need to give them a consent. Yeah. Once you've selected the right set of people, assuming that you have done a good job in your selection process, it's important that you continue to train them, because jobs keep changing. And that means the skills required for performing these new jobs, those are changing. So upskilling is very much required. And the kind of skills that you're looking for is basic skills, maybe education sometimes, technical skills, very specific to the job, and problem solving skills, because you're definitely confronting different kinds of problems every day. Your interpersonal skills, because sometimes we struggle to work in teams. We're very good individually, but when it comes to interacting with others, we struggle. Kind of empathy we do not have, the ability to work in teams, we struggle. So interpersonal skills, communication skills, these are skills that we definitely require to be successful, even if you're very strong in technical and problem solving skills. In addition, you could possibly consider civility training, that you cannot bully people, you cannot insult them, you cannot try and dominate and put someone at a disadvantageous position. So that kind of training is definitely required. Even in meetings, there should be some sense of civility. Even if you disagree, it cannot become personal, it cannot become emotional. You don't start throwing tantrums, and that's not nice behavior. You could go give ethics training, because ethics are important, as we discussed in previous classes. You can discuss the code of conduct and train them on that, and keep hammering on the point ethics is important to business. So that's what we discussed about basic skills. It's about reading comprehension, writing, math skills, basic education that everybody requires. I think that's a basic skill that you can continue to improve. Say reading comprehension, writing skills, math skills. I mean, nobody's perfect on all of those. We can continue to work on them and become better and even better. Technical skills, new technology, structural designs. It could be, suppose you're a punch press operator in a manufacturing company. You're a welder. You're somebody who operates the lathe machine. So you could be having very specific skills that you require in terms of technical skills. So if I'm a professor, do I have skills how to use new software? Am I good with SPSs? Am I good with Amos? Can I use R or can I use Python? And probably you need to train me so that I'm capable of using these, embedding these in my course curriculum. So obviously technical skills, everybody requires them. Problem solving skills, because we confront problems, challenges, issues at the workplace. How do we solve these problems? How do we gather data? How do we make meaning of these data inputs and then try and arrive at possible approaches in solving a problem? So the logic, reasoning, problem defining skills, problem identification skills, and looking at the causation. What is causing the problem? What are direct causes and indirect causes of the problem itself? How do we, work at eliminating these things that are causing the problem? So, and probably we cannot have one best solution for everything. So do we consider different alternative solutions to the problem? And then obviously it means decision-making skills as well. So you can train your managers, your supervisors, your employees on how to identify problems, how to collect data concerning the problem, how to analyze that data, and then come up with different solutions to the problem and determine which is the best possible solution at the given point of time in terms of feasibility, in terms of practicality, which is the best possible solution that can be implemented. And how do people actually mobilize action in implementing solutions to a problem? So all these things are pretty much necessary for every employee, and training towards that effect is definitely useful. Interpersonal skills, I just explained that it includes how you interact with people, your communication skills. Sometimes most of our problems are because of miscommunication, misunderstanding, distortion of information, information that can be manipulated. So obviously you have to tell people, it's good to communicate more and make sure you have feedback and don't have these preconceived notions, and perceptions should not alter reality towards dysfunctional behavior. So all these interpersonal skills are essential for every person in the organization. Civility, I just explained that there are people who are very abusive, they bully others, especially new hires are bullied by those senior people. I've seen that happen at every organization. So you got to teach your senior employees to be mentors. You got to be facilitative. You've got to be supportive rather than just bully people and say, oh, you don't know anything. How come you even don't know this stuff? Who gave you a bachelor's degree? And this is pretty much garbage. I've seen people say stuff like that. That's not civility. That's incivility. That's bullying. That's being abusive. So you have to train your employees, repeatedly. They might be having experience, but they must have just forgotten how important it is to treat people with respect. Ethics training, I just talked about it. You got to tell them, see, ethics is important, and maybe get them familiar with the organization's code of conduct as well, and how much of importance the company places on ethical approaches to doing business. Training methods, there are many. One of the training methods that I'm using right now is formal training methods, like the classroom training. Perhaps not the best method because it's talking from one person. It just gets boring. It's too much of information sometimes. You don't get a chance to participate. You don't give feedback. You don't actually do something. You don't work on something. And therefore, classroom teaching, as a conventional training method might not be the best method. You have on-the-job training, very useful, because suppose you have to teach me how to use an equipment. You're teaching me how to use a tool. Show it to me. Suppose you're teaching me a new software. Demonstrate that. So I can actually download that software and learn along with what you're trying to teach me. You show me how to do it. I'll continue to do it. So job rotation is on-the-job training, apprenticeship. That's why, guys, wherever you have a chance, take up internship opportunities, because that's clearly a case of learning by doing. On the job training is learning by actually doing. Understudy assignment. Suppose you work with the senior manager for a while, you exactly know what the senior manager does and what he says in the meetings, what reports does he collect, what kind of decisions he makes, what kind of problems that she is dealing with. You get to see all that live in action. Understudy assignments, a great example of on the job training. Suppose you're preparing somebody to take up the next position, succession planning. The best thing is to do an understudy assignment. If I've got to be the next dean, I better work with the dean for at least 1 or 2 years. Then I'm prepared to be the next dean because I exactly have seen for the last 2 years what she is doing as the dean. What she does in terms of planning, what she does in terms of accreditation, what she does in terms of maintaining good relations with external stakeholders and industry partners, what she does with student retention, enrollment, and stuff like that, what she does to keep faculty as one cohesive unit. So I'm getting to see and learn firsthand working with her for the first 2 years, and then I'm prepared if the opportunity presents itself to be the next dean. Mentoring, I explained that. Off the job training, classroom lectures, the most boring ones, I believe. Videotapes. Oh, it's funny they say videotapes. Videos, I think, are interesting. I've taken a couple of courses on listening to videos, webinars, and they're really interesting. Public seminars, and you now call them webinars. Self-study, guys, there is no substitute to self-study. I was just having a recent conversation with a master's student in information network and cybersecurity, MS in information network and cybersecurity in New York Tech, and she does plenty of classes from India. She takes classes here. She's an MIT student doing a master's in information network and cybersecurity, but she also takes classes from India on SQL, on Java, on programming, and then she's planning to do further in Python and in R programming and stuff like that. She's already into cybersecurity, but she wants programming because if you're good in two different things, because you know the security protocols, the firewalls that you have to install, and you know where the hackers can get in, vulnerability, can do assessment of vulnerabilities in your security systems, but she also wants to be strong in programming skills. So together, when you bring two different skills together, you have more employability, you have different functions, different roles to play within the company. They cannot get rid of you because you're multi-skilled. So to me, self-study, internet, taking classes from remote, webinars, videos, I think they are beautiful, great substitutes for just those boring live classroom lectures. Computer-based training, I think it's also very good because see, in my other course from Busy 435, which is a capstone course, we do a simulation. It's called Globus. It's a business simulation. It's like managing your own company, but it's a fictitious online company. It's like a video game, but it's about business. You will have product decisions, pricing decisions, promotion decisions, place and availability decisions. You will take decisions which are related to finance. You will take decisions which are related to your marketing, sales, promotion, water, stuff. You will take decisions on CSR. You will take also decisions on your green initiatives, image rating, all those kind of decisions. You will do it playing a game called Globus. And this is computer-based training. So everybody manages their business to improve the earnings per share, increase the return on investment, return on equity, improve the credit rating, improve the image rating, obviously improving revenues and sales. So this computer-based training program, it's a fun game. It's an online business game, but it's managing all your business decisions together. So to me, these kind of training methods are really invaluable, a very good replacement to conventional classroom lectures. So you don't want to simply put money into creating a training program without evaluating if the training program has been effective or not, because there's a lot of effort, a lot of investment, many resources from within the company and from outside the company that are hired to deliver these training programs. You want to see the return on investment. You want to see how much of transfer of learning is there from training, how much has it contributed to improvements in performances, and how much has it resulted in greater satisfaction of your employees. So the content, the design, the delivery, transfer of learning, improved performance, greater employee satisfaction. These are all criteria to say our training has been effective. And if there has to be small changes, improvements, we will make it. So that's the key of how you create training methods. And once you train people, improve their skills and competences, and then you're assured that it's going to reflect in high level performance, it's important you think about performance management systems. You create goals, you train people, you tell them these are the rewards, and that's the motivation, and then you let them perform, and you have to measure performance. Now, performance can be measured in terms of task performance, KPIs, key performance indicators, your citizenship behavior. You go out of the way to do something that's not even there in your job description. Say, suppose I'm helping right now getting more enrollment for the MBA program, getting more students to enroll for the MBA program. That is citizenship behavior. I'm not in charge of recruiting students. I'm not the admissions people. I'm not in the strategic communications and marketing department, but I'm happy to help. I'm willing to do that extra bit because I'm a good citizen for the company, for New York Tech. So, and then counterproductivity. Maybe there are behaviors that are not really helpful. People indulge in deviant behavior, counterproductive behavior. You might want to keep a close tab on that. So things that are productive related to KPIs and task performance, very important. What people do beyond their job titles and job descriptions, very important. You also want to keep a close tab on stuff that your employees might do that are pretty much counterproductive and dysfunctional. Now, again, why do we do performance evaluation? Because if I have to say, give you a contract for the next year, your next year contract depends on how well you perform this year, right? So performance evaluation is very important to see whether you should be continued, whether you should be rewarded, or whether you could get promoted. Performance evaluation is also required for figuring out if your performance is not that great, what kind of help do you require? Do you need some training? Do you need some extra support? Do you need some technology? Do you need some software to help you do better? So all these kind of support, assessment can be done because I'm doing a performance evaluation. And then providing feedback to employees lets them correct their behavior. Suppose you're not doing that great, and I tell you, these are areas where you want to focus. Honest feedback, descriptive feedback, very, objective kind of feedback that I give you, timely feedback that if I gave you, it just gives you an opportunity to correct your approach, your strategy, and the way you perform the task. And obviously it helps you improve your performance. And obviously the last and most important thing, performance evaluation to determine who has to be rewarded and what kind of rewards go to which individual. What do we evaluate? Task outcomes, behaviors, and also traits. A person who is, accomplishing tasks gets a positive evaluation, exhibits the right behavior individually as well as within teams. Traits, leadership initiative, honesty, those kind of characteristics, obviously these are valuable. Who should be doing the evaluation? You could have everybody do the evaluation. You could have your boss, you could have your peer group members, and you could have your subordinates, your team members, you could have your customers do the evaluation. Anybody could do the evaluation for you. Could have a 360-degree evaluation of your performance. And that's exactly this. Your management can evaluate you, your direct supervisor, suppliers whom you're interacting can evaluate you, your customers and clients, because those are the most important stakeholders, they can evaluate if you're doing a good job, department members, co-workers and peer group members, team members, subordinates, work group members. You can take inputs from anybody. It's not necessary to take from all, but a 360-degree feedback is making sure you're not having those personal biases and prejudices. Use multiple evaluators, evaluate selectively. This is, I think the third point is very important. You need to train evaluators. Suppose I'm evaluating my colleagues and faculty and staff. Some kind of training should be given to me so that I understand the process, I understand the criteria. I've got to make sure that I'm not doing evaluations purely based on my feelings and emotions, but based on those criteria. I follow a process and I should be able to evidence it. Each of those things that I say they're doing, is there an evidence? Only then evaluation can become very objective and stay away from being very subjective or personalized. So provide employees with due process, these three features of due process, post appraisals online, criteria, measure, transparency, disclosure. They should be able to see. Suppose I do the evaluation for Chris or for Clifford. So if I did evaluation for any one of you, you got to see the criteria way well in advance, and the process that I've used. You got to see the actual evaluations, and you have a fair chance of commenting or disagreeing with some of the evaluations that I've made. Feedback, we spoke about it. Managers are often uncomfortable discussing weaknesses with employees, but that's the key. I wish any one of you, if you wanted to know what your personal feedback is, and if you want me to spot something specific that I would like to give you feedback on, you could actually approach me, and I'll be happy to. I can give individualized feedback in a classroom. I don't feel comfortable either. I would like to give individual feedback if you were to approach me individually. The solution to the problem is not to ignore it, but train managers to conduct constructive feedback sessions. And feedback could be on performance, on organizational policies, maybe ethical principles, on the key performance indicators, on goals, on expectations. Feedback could be on anything. We're going off to the last leg of this chapter where I don't know, I'm trying to go fast because I can give you some time towards the end of the class if you have questions or if you want to meet as breakout rooms. I'm not really sure. I'll continue to do it quick. So leadership role of HR in organizations. As I was saying, HR is very fundamentally important. Any change that you want to bring in within the company, any strategic change you want to create, or any new technologies that you want to bring, any new products that you plan to introduce, any new areas, geographic areas that you want to get into, or any collaborations that you want to have, well, that is driven by HR. So I think HR is such an crucial, it plays a crucial role in the direction of where the organization is headed to. So, and then the last one, which is very important, is administering the benefits program. Obviously, you're thinking about compensating employees. People give a sizable amount of their time every day coming to the workplace, and this is very important for them because they kind of recognize, they have the sense of self-fulfillment, their esteem needs are satisfied because of what they do at the workplace. And so that's a very psychologically important thing for every human being, and because of which the way they're compensated is very important. So not just the base pay, with the variable pay and the benefits program. And the best benefit program should actually be, suited to the organization's culture, reflect the values of the company, demonstrate economic feasibility. You just can't give, across the board hike in salary or bonuses. So obviously it should be economically feasible and be sustainable. It's not just 1 year you are compensating, but you should be able to continue to compensate over a period of time. Policies, HR is also in charge of policies because policies actually guide action. Any of the behaviors that employees want to exhibit or any action that they want to take, they got to go back to policies. So HR is one, function in management that has those policies drafted, approved, and implemented. So for quick reference, they can have all these HR policies, employment policies available to you. It could be policies regarding insurance, health coverage, safety standards. It could be regarding your performance appraisal, mandatory training required. It could be policies on anything. And these policies are made aware, you've got to make it aware. So you need to communicate it across the organization. Managing work life, I think this is a key element. I'm sure you know from experience that you've had working with companies, it's energy sapping. A lot of your energy gets drained out by what you do every day at the workplace. It could be dealing with people, dealing with customers, dealing with tough, environmental situations like the pandemic, for example. And how do you manage all that with your family life and your family responsibilities? So designing jobs in ways that are reasonable, that can reduce that kind of stress, can reduce the commute time, for example, and also give the kind of benefits that employees feel less stressed, say quality childcare, maybe trying to help them find the right set of schools. Google even fixes your flat tire. So a lot of help and support, organizational support can, reduce the amount of stress and can create better work-life balance. And people who are not stressed are most productive, most creative, and employees who are extremely stressed, they cannot contribute, they cannot be creative, they cannot be innovative, they cannot shoulder extra responsibilities. So obviously HR plays a big role. You can create membership to gyms and spas. You can create places where employees can go play for a while. You can create places where they can rest for a while, and you create all these for free. Give them a lot of benefits, and you can take care of the chores that they have to attend to. So getting off these things and giving opportunities for them to detox, I think they are very crucial. So I'm done with the HR policies and practices, which are extremely important for